Hi there. This is just a video really regarding um, the SSPX, the Society of Saint Pius X, and the possible schism in the Catholic Church, which is going on at the moment. Uh, between the kind of traditional Catholics and the kind of status quo, um, and Pope Leo's kind of threat to excommunicate the SSPX if they ordain bishops. it it's just really kind of three issues I want to kind of bring up. So the first issue is a kind of irony about the fact that the traditional Catholics um, are now at risk of becoming the modern day Protestants in a sense, protesting about the church, protesting about the Pope, and feeling really that he's lost his way. So there was a bit of an irony about that, despite the fact that they are ultra Catholic and probably really the true Catholic. Um, so they must find themselves in a bit of an odd position there. So that's the first thing. Uh, the second thing is I do feel a bit of sympathy for them in this sense. So there is a lot, or there has been a lot of talk about Vatican II and these traditional Catholics. Um, in recent years, I've got more and more vocal about Vatican II and what they see as the errors of Vatican II and maybe what they see as heresies from it. Now, it's interesting because it hasn't. You would have thought this would have happened more at the time, but this seemed to be something in the last, what, um, 15, 16, 17 years, really. Um, and you would, if you were just someone who wasn't kind of in the know or didn't have your fingers on the pulse, you'd say, well, why has this come back? Why all of a sudden are they kind of arguing over Vatican II? It's a bit like unscrambling an omelette. It's been done now. But I think a lot of the kind of blame does go to Pope Francis. I think um, Pope Benedict had managed to bring back these people into the church, um, and have a church where both the traditionalists and the more kind of pro status quo people were able to function um, without causing a split. And I think since Pope Francis, that there's been more kind of discord. Now, I the funny thing is with Vatican II, I'm actually quite sympathetic to the theology. Um, so for myself, more sympathetic to the theology of Vatican II, but actually prefer the traditional Catholics as people. So it's a funny one, really. I think you do find that the traditional Catholics, or trad Catholics, as you know, as they're known as, tend to be a kind of more kind of pious and genuine people. I mean, I just anecdotally, I know a few, and they're really great guys, and they do really believe. And I think sometimes with the post Vatican II people, you do get the impression they're a bit more like Church of England vicars. So I do sympathise with the trad Catholics in terms of I think they're very genuine people. Where I disagree with them actually is on the theology. I think um, the service should be said in the language of the country. I think and we'd probably come to the same conclusion, but for different reasons. I'm a fan of Martin Luther, so I think the fact that Vatican II allowed for the priest to say the service with his facing the parishioners and say it in their language was a vindication of Luther, and really that they should have taken on board what Luther said at the time and help him lead the church into the next century, they would say that what Vatican II has done by accepting these reforms, albeit 500 years later, 400 years later, is actually turn themselves into Protestants. And it's a fair point in terms of I'm someone who grew up post Vatican II, and there was definitely less reverence for things like the Eucharist, for sacraments like the Eucharist, and definitely, I think, less of an emphasis on things like transubstantiation, less kind of a more, I think when they say Protestant, a more kind of Anglican or Episcopalian approach, where you kind of let things slide a bit. And I think I remember when I was young, you could eat. They changed the rule where you could eat. It used to be you couldn't eat. Before a certain number of hours before taking the Eucharist. I think they changed that. You didn't have to kneel by a rail to take the communion. Things like that, and they changed a lot of the terms. I think confession became reconciliation. The sacrament, sort of like an extreme unction, sorry, became, I think, the sacrament of the sick, things like that. And we did it did tend to. I mean, you get the case in America of a lot of people becoming Orthodox because I think there's a yearning for those pre-Vatican II days of a kind of reverence and a mystery, and something sacred. But despite that, I do think the Vatican II theology was right. So it's almost like the theology is right, in terms of by the letter, but it has created a bad effect, or the consequences have been bad. So it's almost like they did the right thing technically, but actually it was the wrong thing. If that makes any sense, I don't know if it does. Also, regarding those kind of traditional Catholics, uh, I know of a lot of um, kind of parishioners or priests who actually went out and gave the sacraments to people during COVID or during the lockdown, which was really admirable. And they were people who realised that these are millennia or 2 millennia old sacraments, and of the gravest importance, and more important than like a here today gone tomorrow politician who, well, both of the main parties at that time had MPs that were incredibly venal and sinister, and that these sacraments were more important than that, and that whatever they say, it takes second place to that. Also, just anecdotally, um, that I remember a kind of a traditional Catholic priest giving extra unction to both of my parents when they were ill, and they didn't. They just came to visit them. It was like a friend of the family, and they didn't. They had the equipment in their car. They didn't even come for that purpose, but they saw how ill they were, and they actually just went into their car, got the oil and the text, and started doing it. And it was, you do get the impression they do genuinely believe in what they're doing, whereas I think some of the priests, like kind of Church of England vicars or Episcopalian ministers, don't. I do think a lot of Calvinists or Presbyterians do believe what they're saying and do genuinely believe. Baptists likewise. It's the kind of Anglicans, Episcopalians, you think, well, they're more like social workers now, and um, you you don't want the Catholic Church to kind of go down that road, where you think, well, if that's all you are, there's no point having you. So I do really feel a sympathy for those traditional Catholics, but it is a shame that they've kind of it's a shame that they're doing things that are going to cause them to be excommunicated, because we don't want that. Um, and like I say at the beginning, where it was like there's the irony that they're acting like Reformed Protestants, in the 1500s. They, you know, not accepting a Vatican Council. They really, should they be able to say they just don't accept Vatican II? It was a Vatican Council. Should they be able to kind of uh, ordain bishops, um, off their own bat? They're not really allowed to do it. So it's a tricky one. I really sympathise with them, but it's a shame it's going down this road, because it needn't. And I think a lot of the work that Benedict did was quite good in bringing those two sides kind of together, or at least not having a split. I do fear there might be a split now, and I would call for more kind of harmony. That I think Leo, if Pope Leo is happy talking about the environment all the time, and things like that, he's got to accept there are people in the church who are really serious about doctrinal stuff. And if he's not is into that, and I don't know, or he thinks they're troublemakers, that's okay. But he shouldn't excommunicate them, and there should be room for those people, in a way that there's room. You know, you, that the Benedict brought in the Anglican rite. You have Maronites associated with the Catholic Church, who've got married priests. Um, you, if you don't like these SSPX, that's fine. Or you think they're troublemakers, or you think they're fringe, that's fine. But don't excommunicate them. They should give them more leeway, because they're losing some really good people, and they don't want to end up like the Church of England or Episcopalian Church. I mean, if you saw, I think it was the service after Trump was inaugurated in uh, in January 2025, was it? It's off the top of my head. Yeah. Um, there was I think she was an Episcopalian, a woman who spent a kind of homily talking about issues that weren't really, um, Christ-centered. Basically, I don't want to get involved in some kind of culture war here, but they weren't key issues. It was almost like she was making it about herself, and that shouldn't happen. So with these SSPX people, you're kind of losing some kind of genuine people with integrity, um, and you could cause you to get more and more people like that Episcopalian at Trump's inauguration, and that wouldn't be a good way for the church to go. If you want to be a social worker, or if you want to go down that path, you can. There's no need to be religious to do that. I mean, a secular person can look after the poor, give to charity, and do all those things. You have a church because of something more than that. It's not just a social worker organisation, or an organisation about redistribution of wealth. There are plenty of secular communists or socialists who believe in that, or social democrats. The church is a bit different, so that can be one aspect, but everything must flow from a Christ-centered Christianity. So I really do hope that these people aren't excommunicated, because they'll be losing good people. And I say that as someone who actually supports most of Vatican II. Like I say, support the service done in the language of the people, support the service done with the priest facing the parishioners. But I don't see SSPX people as my enemies, or um, as people who um, are kind of opponents. I think it's good to have a big tent, and uh, those people should not be pushed out of it. I also think that, if so, lastly, that this kind of Vatican II issue has been a kind of a totemic issue, and that we have, whenever there's a kind of this discord, or there are issues, it always keeps coming back to, well, they're a Vatican II, or they're a traditional Catholic, or whatever, and it's a bit unfortunate to see, really, and it seems a bit petty. And I'd also say there are people who are capable of having like um, a different opinions on different issues. So just because I believe in the service being done in the language of whatever country you're in, it doesn't mean I want women bishops. Do you know what I mean? So I would say to the traditionalists, don't think that someone, just because someone supports the kind of main thrust of Vatican II, it doesn't mean they're like real radicals. And similarly, you the kind of the people, the, the kind of post Vatican II people shouldn't see those SSPX people as too reactionary or too conservative. That they are good people as well. So I think there needs to be a unity there. I also think there should be more unity between Christians in general. Because I have a lot of sympathy for all the denominations. I do think the Anglican and Episcopalian ones are barely religions now, and probably should just fold. But both the Protestant ones and the ultra Orthodox Catholics, I think there's a place for all of them. And it's definitely a shame when the Catholic Church throws out the SSPX people, and I really hope that in the end they don't, because they've got a really important contribution to make.